You found your way to the Winning Tactics podcast with host Adam Sinkus. Adam discusses winning tactics with small business owners and entrepreneurs, uncovering processes and introducing the tools and solutions for enhancing the bottom line. Thanks again for finding your way to the Winning Tactics podcast, and now your host, Adam Sinkus.
What is going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Well, it's Tuesday in my world. We are coming to you live from the Winning Tactics, and I'm excited today. Today's going to be a great show. We're driving down sales, and I have a wonderful, wonderful guest on the show today, Robert McFarland. Robert, welcome to the show. So glad to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive into the ever so important stuff.
Well, thanks so much, Adam. It's really great to be here with you. And just kind of in a nutshell, what I do is basically I help any business be able to find $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 in additional annual recurring revenue in their business in less than an hour without them spending any additional money on marketing or advertising.
Awesome. Yeah. One of the things I think is really interesting, right, is there's a ton of opportunities for us in business to find money from within our own systems, right? And so it's just so interesting that when we stop and pause and start to think about what that process looks like, there's ways to save money, there's ways to make extra money, there's ways to even leverage your people and your processes in more efficient ways where you can do more with the same amount of time. So excited to get into this topic today. You have what you call the 5-step profit formula. What does that dramatically impact a company's bottom line? What is it? And then we'll dive into the why.
Yeah, really. Yeah. The whole idea of the 5-step profit formula is that within a business that most people don't really realize how they can actually leverage the time that they have to really benefit them at the greatest maximum impact. And what I mean by that is that basically 20% of what we do every day really results in 80% of our revenue. Okay. That's just in a nutshell. But most people don't realize in that 80-20 formula there that 20% of what they do every day can be broken down into those 5 areas. And so that 5-step profit formula really breaks down into that 20%, which makes up 80% of our revenue. And so what that really entails is that if we do those 5 steps, we can have a compounding effect on our revenue. So let me break down what those 5 steps are. First of all, it's really getting more leads. Okay. Leads are the lifeblood of any organization. We got to make sure we get our leads in the door. Okay. So getting more leads. Secondly, is getting more conversions. Leads aren't very helpful if you don't actually convert them into customers. So then you got leads, customers, and then next is getting more transactions. Okay, so getting more transactions per customer. Fourth, it's getting higher revenue. Okay, so getting more revenue from our transactions. And then finally, fifth, it is getting more profit from our revenue. Because Adam, as it works out, that revenue is for bragging rights, but profit is what puts food on the table. So we got to make sure that we're maximizing our profit. So it's really leads and then conversions, transactions, revenue, and then profits is really what makes that work.
I love that you start this with more leads and more conversions, right?
Okay.
Because the reality is that sales is the lifeblood of a business, and I work in this space in the marketing world, and we talk about more leads, but there's bad leads and there's good leads, right? And and the amount of bad leads you get directly impacts your ability to convert. And so I really love that you start there. How do we, in your mind, how do we focus more on those good leads, those ones that do convert?
Yeah, because the whole thing is that we want to make sure that we are converting them with a process that's going to work. Okay. It's one thing to get leads. It's another thing to get qualified leads. Okay.
Yeah.
And then leads that actually want to talk to you. And so the process really there in terms of being able to have a formula that can help you do that is really what it's all about. So, I mean, wouldn't you agree that I mean, having a formula to actually get there would be more helpful in producing that? So that's what we have also is our conversion equation. It's something that we've used to really be able to help people produce the kind of leads, actually, excuse me, qualified leads that they want. And so that really breaks down into just 4 steps in terms of that. Because marketing can be a little confusing for people. But at the same time, though, if we break it down into a formulaic process, I mean, even I can understand. But so like hey, have you ever made brownies from the back of a Betty Crocker box?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, so if you make the brownies, following the recipe in the back of the box, you have the same kind of brownies every time, right?
yep.
Yeah. So with that, it's the same kind of thing with the conversion equation. If we follow the 4 steps on the conversion equation, we're going to get the same result every single time.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was to say, to me, that is the foundation of everything we do in business is following a consistent steps, right? And so often I work with, I'll go in and work with a company and, ask them, okay, well, how do you get your leads? Where are they coming from? And we get through that finally. And, and then we go, okay, once you've decided they're a good lead, what's next? What happens next? Oh, well, Joe calls them and he does his thing. And, and sometimes they convert and sometimes they don't. It's like, well, what is Joe doing? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gets very problematic if they don't actually have not just a process to get qualified leads, but then what do you do with them afterwards? I mean, you've got to have a system that's actually going to follow up. So, but in terms of that whole conversion equation process, I mean, to start off, I mean, every prospect, regardless of what they're buying, I mean, they got 2 emotional issues they're dealing with. Okay, there's a problem that they have that they don't want, and there's a solution they want but don't have. Regardless, it doesn't matter what
Mhm.
industry, it doesn't matter what they're buying, it's across the board. And so if we really zero in on that, I mean, that is really going to be the key to successful marketing, because that way then that what they're then we get what's going on inside the head of our clients, for our prospects. If we can really understand what's going on inside their heads, then we can really be able to market to them. And so that's those 2 points right there, which also are the first really foundational pieces of the conversion equation. So the first thing we got to do in that whole conversion equation process is really be able to really hit them with a headline that states the problem that they have that they don't want. Okay,
Yep.
that's going to be the first thing out of our mouth, the first thing in our marketing, the first thing on our webpage. And then the research says we get about 3 seconds to engage them. And so we got to then give them the sub headline that tells them the solution they want but don't have. And so that really then gets them right there. You've got a qualified lead. Okay, because if you understand their problem and you can provide them that solution, bam, they're in. But then we go a step further, actually 2 steps further. We then are able to then bring them in by showing them information, either verbally or in writing, that demonstrates how you, me, whoever it is, that our product or service is superior in every way to our competition. And then we give them an offer that's so compelling that they can't turn down. When you put those 4 steps in process, it's like the brownie box, recipe in the back. It's foolproof. I mean, it just works every time.
I want to touch on a couple of things. So I want to start with, you talk about the problem that they have and the solution that they don't have, right? And this is really, where messaging comes in. But if I have maybe 3 or 4 avatars, how do I accomplish that in one space, right? Because sometimes we don't have the luxury of having, 3 or 4 or 5 landing pages to get somebody to come to. So what are some tips in that space?
Well, actually, that's key, though. You just said it right there. You need to have separate landing pages for those different avatars, because the whole thing is we got to be able to zero in on who our target market is. The more specific we can be, the more our prospect feels like, oh man, they get me. They understand me. I mean, the better it's going to be. I mean, unfortunately, most companies have their websites looking like all things to all people. And therefore, they don't get anybody to convert. I mean, they don't have anybody that's actually going to take them up on their offer because it's so generic. And I mean, you look at it, you can see it. I mean, look at all these websites. Nobody's doing the kind of stuff that I'm talking about here because everybody's trying to appeal to everybody and they don't want to exclude anybody. Whereas the key is really focusing because the riches are in the niches. I mean, really being able to zero in on who you're trying to reach is going to actually produce the results.
Yeah, no, we just rebranded this year, with a second brand specifically for a niche, going from, we realized that, the home services, roofing, construction people wanted drastically different messaging than our SaaS people, our nonprofits did. And so we built out an entire brand around them specifically because it just made more sense than trying to fit them in our box that we were in, messaging to a very, very different audience. So I do love that, and I think there is value to that, and I think there's ways that you can build those pieces into even a general website to speak to your specific audiences. You just have to run that funnel or run that flow so that they can get to the problem that they have.
And that's so key right there is having that funnel, having that process. I mean, like you're saying, Joe didn't know nobody knew what Joe was doing once the prospects came in the door, but having that key process that that your prospects are going to go through is really key to that because it's your landing page is just got to be the endpoint from whatever communications you're getting them to that point. So they can then be able to get nurtured or whatever in terms of whatever communications you're sending them from your drip campaign or whatever you're doing to be able to get them to that landing page where they'll actually convert.
Yeah, I want to talk about the offer piece, right? Because that's the one mistake I see a lot of people make in that compelling offer. It is that they're so ready to discount their services and their time down to nothing to be the compelling offer, right? It's just like, wait. We got to pause for a second here. You can't just give the house away, right? So talk us through a little bit about this compelling offer portion of the conversion equation. How do we make that so that we can still be profitable and not give away the farm?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea that people would try to sell something for lower than the cost is, I don't always recommend that because you're really discounting the value that you have. Now, granted, I can understand if you're going to discount it for that first purchase to be able to get somebody in the door, as a way to actually, as long as you can make money on the back end, maybe on the front end you wanted to get discount. Okay, I get it. But the problem is though that if you start discounting yourself, then in the process you can become discounted in terms of the value you provide to your prospects and your clients. So that's a slippery slope in terms of establishing that offer. But you've got to, but I mean, to your point, I mean, developing that offer is not an easy thing. It's not something you just slap on a web page. It's something you really got to think through deeply in terms of what is it that they're going to take advantage of, and really be able to realize the full benefit of what you provide. But it's not impossible, but it's really, you got to put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were talking about kind of at the start of this, with the different avatars, right? It doesn't mean that one offer is the offer, right?
Exactly. I mean, one offer may not be the same thing as somebody else. I mean, it's something you offer somebody else because really, if you've got different customer bases that are very unique, therefore you really got to make sure that you're dialed in to the specific needs, the problem they have, they don't want, the solution they want but don't have, regardless of which niche they're in.
So, as we move through this buyer's journey a little bit, right? Because that's essentially what we're talking about here. We're moving people through the buyer's journey to make them, to build that know, like, and trust, make them feel like we're speaking to them and their specific problems. Where is the point in that process where we start to really push them into, okay, we need you to start making a decision? I use awareness, consideration, decision as my buyer's journey. There's a boatload of models out there that are all pretty much the same thing. But how do we start to move people from that awareness consideration stage into that decision stage and encourage them to buy? You talked about an enticing offer. What else can we do in our messaging to help uh, improve the odds of them making that decision to buy with us?
Well, stepping back a little bit, first we have to realize what is the purpose of marketing, and because I think so many business owners really look at marketing as, oh, it's tactical. Well, we got to step back and realize, no, marketing is strategic, and we have to have that mindset. I mean, to really be able to have that kind of process in order to be able to do it. Slapping stuff up, just it doesn't cut it. But because in terms of the whole idea of having that buyer's journey is to realize that they are going on a journey, and there's a starting process when they don't have a clue as to who you are. And like you were talking about awareness, and we've got to start there to realize that, hey, they may not have any clue who we are, what we do, or anything like that. And then we have to really be able to educate. We have to first let them know we're on the map. Then we got to be able to make sure that they realize the benefits that we provide. And then once we've been able to establish the benefits we provide, we have to make sure that they're aware that they can overcome objections to buying. That's key too.
Yep.
And only then are they going to be willing to consider, any kind of vendor selection criteria. They've got to get those other things established first. But unfortunately, I mean, only about 3%, somewhere in there, are, depending on industry, etc., are ready to buy at any one time. And yet the vast majority of marketing, and you know what I'm talking about. I mean, vast majority of websites, vast majority of marketing is all geared at the now buyer. And there's 97%, give or take a little, that are not now buyers. I mean, they don't know you exist. They don't know your benefits. They don't know, they're stuck on objections, but nobody's marketing to them, and so therefore there's such a lost opportunity.
I was having a chuckle about this, as the December, all the November and December health insurance people were messaging me like crazy on all my social channels going, but you waited exactly until you thought I could possibly need my health insurance stuff right here and now to let me know that I should work with you. None of these people do I have any relationship with.
So what a missed opportunity for them. I mean, they're coming at you and they're figuring that maybe this time of year that you would be needing to buy. But, if you're a prudent business owner, as I know you are, you would have been thinking about this months ago.
Oh, yeah.
So why they put this off the last minute, it's
I established my benefits guy back in June.
There you go. I mean, and he was probably even trying to let you know the benefits and such like that along the way, so that he was actually be able to close the sale.
Yeah, well, yeah. He offered some other services as well, and everything just kind of fit in. And it's like, well, I've already that ship has sailed for me, and I don't need to make a snap decision on the 65 people that I've never met and never talked to before.
Right, exactly. And that's so key. What you're talking about there is that it's all about a relationship. And so that there's so many people who I get all kinds of stuff, and you do too. It just fills my inbox. All these people I've never met, I don't have any idea who they are, and they're trying to sell me big expensive stuff. And I'm like, this is not working. I mean, I have no interest whatsoever, because they're assuming I'm a now buyer. They haven't tried to make any effort to be able to find out what's the problem I have that I don't want, what's a solution I want but don't have. And they haven't given me anything that's compelling in terms of why I should buy. And so, and that is the vast majority of marketing that's out there.
Yeah, no, it's death by inbox, right? And
exactly.
And I always chuckle at that. Somebody told me that along the way long ago, and I always chuckle at that. It's death by inbox, because you kill your chance of ever making a sale with the cold email that's terribly misplaced. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, because go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish.
Just the whole idea that we really have to interrupt them with something that's going to really hit them where they're at. I mean, instead of the canned marketing that we always get, we got to get something that's actually going to interrupt them with the problem that they have and they don't want.
Yeah. No, I want to take just a brief moment. I want to pause and thank our sponsors for the show. They're the ones that help keep us going. When you need that extra dose of caffeine packaged into a delicious cup of coffee, check out our friends over at Rot Gut Coffees. They recently sent us over their bombshell coffee. From the rich smell from brewing to sipping to that first cup, it did not disappoint. The well-balanced dark roast has a smooth finish with citrus notes. Freaking delicious. Hop on over to rotgutcoffees.com. Order yours today. Link in the show notes. And we thank them so much for their support of the Winning Tactics podcast. We've been talking a whole lot about the 5-step profit formula, the conversion equation. And I want to dive into some strategies, right? Because at the end of the day, all the theory stuff makes no bit of difference if we can't figure out how to apply it to our business. What are some simple strategies that small business owners can apply right now that they can start to improve their profits?
Mm-hmm. Well, many businesses don't realize that they are actually in some kind of an event chain, okay? And that there may be a process that people go through in terms of things they buy, and they may be somebody that's in that process. So, like, for example, let me talk about the wedding industry, okay? So let's say you're a florist, all right? And you're in this event chain. People don't think about buying flowers first when they're getting married. That's not the first criteria they think of. They'll think about, booking a place to have the ceremony. They'll think about a place that they need to book for, where they're going to have the reception, or maybe it's one and the same. They'll think about getting an event planner, for that. Eventually, they'll get down the line to looking at getting a florist. But the fact is that the florist is part of that whole event chain. I mean, and you got caterers and you got DJs and you got, other folks in the process too. But what the thing is that if a florist were to actually think about, hey, if I can find somebody who's really good at, has a really good venue, who's a really good event planner, someone who's a really good caterer, someone who's a really good DJ, and then be able to create a joint venture with them, and to the point that then they can get more leads coming in the door because everybody is all focused on the same kind of thing. They all service these people getting married. And so that becomes really powerful in terms of being able to bring in more qualified leads from people who are doing the same kind of thing. And so that's something that people can really look at. And that can really improve not only the number of leads, but it also increase your revenue big time. Because, and if you go out and create some kind of, let's say a brochure, like the florist goes out and creates some kind of brochure and that really targets, hey, 5 things you don't want to mess up on your wedding day. Okay. And so, get people their attention that way. You list inside that brochure, all the different, one business per sector within your event chain in the wedding industry. You negotiate what your fees are going to be. Remember that the thing is that we don't want to just, hope and pray for these referrals to come in. We want to negotiate these in advance so that we know that we're going to pay them for referral fees. They're going to pay us referral fees. And so that there's actually some real revenue changing hands here to incentivize people to do this. So then you list everybody inside your brochure, you hand it out to everybody. And then let's say at the very beginning of the whole event chain, a guy goes to buy a ring. All right. And he's going to get down on one knee and ask a question. And then this whole thing gets off. But then, let's say when the guy goes in to buy the ring, if the jeweler were to hand the guy this brochure with all of these different companies and list in there and said, these are some really good folks that you really could take advantage of, and they're going to really be able to put you in a good stead. Hey, the guys are the jeweler's already, pretty high in the minds of the guy buying the ring because he's buying it from him. So at that point, he's probably going to take advantage of some of these other folks. Especially some guy who's getting married, they're not going to want to go try to research all the different venues and be like, cool.
Of course.
As long as the bride's along with it, he's good, But at the same time, though, the whole idea is just to be able to have that kind of joint venture process so that you can be able to take advantage of of their lead, so that you can then be able to join in that too and increase your rate of revenue in the process. So that's one you can do right off the bat.
I love that, and it's something that I've participated in quite a bit in my business ventures, and it's so powerful because the reality is, like you said earlier, only 3% of buyers are ready to buy now, right?
Right.
So if I'm not the entry point, but I can connect them to the entry point, who's the next person they're going to think about when they need my service, right?
Exactly.
Because I connected them to the event planner, I connected them to the venue, I connected them to whatever it is I connected them to. And so, your network is your net worth is a statement I live by, because if I have somebody that I can trust to send them to, when they're ready for what I do, it's an easy referral back to me.
Absolutely. And going along with what you just said there, another really good idea that people can use if they haven't already implemented that is the whole idea of a drip campaign. I mean, when I say drip campaign, it can be sent via email. Doesn't have to be. It can be sent via direct mail, whatever seems to work best. But the whole idea is that it's not just sales stuff. Okay, people may think, well, I have a drip campaign. Well, if it's just, buy now, buy now, buy now, it's not a drip campaign.
Nope.
I mean, like you were saying before, I mean, the whole idea is you got to have that relationship. And so if you really identify, what are those problems that your prospects have that they don't want, then you can really dial into, well, what are some of those topics that they want to hear? I mean, what are some of those issues they're dealing with that you can then be able to put into an email campaign that will then drive them to nurture them along the way, because they're not a now buyer now, but maybe in a month, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, they will be. And then when they are ready to buy, who are they going to buy from? Well, if you've been nurturing them along the way, providing them value, not just sales stuff, but value, then they're going to be thinking about you when it's time to actually for them to buy.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? To me, the number one overlooked drip campaign that we all have access to is social media, right? People put buy all over their social media for their business pages, and I'm just like, wait a minute. All I do is provide a whole bunch of free resources, and guess what? When people are like, hey, how do I do this? Well, let me direct you to one of my free resources, and point them to social posts, and now all of a sudden they're liking my page and they're engaged in my content, and and the whole channel begins, and the whole conversation begins that way. So, I always love to point that out to people, that social media is the most overlooked drip campaign that we have, that is free to do and easy to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, it's just, but putting those kind of the content out there so that it's just constantly being posted. I mean, if someone's already liked your page, I mean, great. All of a sudden now, they're going to get all your stuff. I mean, but you're right. We don't think about that in terms of an opportunity to be able to really give them some real value. Another way that we can connect with potentially getting more revenue in the door is something like upselling and cross-selling. Now, I think most people are probably familiar with upselling. It's buying more or greater quantity or quality of an item at the time that the prospect is ready to buy. But not everybody is always thinking about cross-selling, okay? Because upselling is, hey, you want to supersize that order. Okay, that's what upselling is. I mean, cross-selling is, hey, you want fries with that. Okay, so it's the whole idea of providing something that's complementary to that product that they're ready to buy. Because many people don't realize that 34% of prospects will buy additional products or services from you at the time of their original purchase if you ask them. I mean, you just got to ask. But so many times people don't ask. At 34%, I mean, that's like, you want to increase your sales by a third? Just do an upsell, cross-sell. I mean,
yeah, no, the cross-sell is great, right? In the cross-sell can happen in that, I think, in that initial sale, but it can also happen in that initial gateway product offering or service offering that you give them as well. We do that quite a bit with our clients, and moving them into what are the next steps as part of our part of our initial project scoping, talking about like if they get a website, right? Talking about, okay, once you get the website, you're going to need content, you're going to need this, you're going to need that. And we start layering in those conversations into our initial project plan. And that becomes a cross-sell path for us as well.
Yeah, yeah. And then if somebody is coming into your whole process and they realize, oh my gosh, Adam, I really can't afford all this stuff, at that point you can say, well, we can do a different strategy. You can do a downsell strategy at that point, and just something to get somebody in the door. Now, I want people to realize that don't hear what I'm not saying. I am not saying lower your price. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is offer an alternative at a lower price to get them in the door. Okay, because then if you can have obviously you want to start off with your gold package or whatever it is, but if they can't buy your gold or your silver, at least offer them your bronze or whatever it is. Get them in the door so that you can then sell them more stuff along the way. And so then bringing them in the door with a downsell can be incredibly important in terms of being able to increase that longevity of that buying relationship.
Yeah, no, I love that philosophy as well. I call that meeting people where they're at, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the reality that like in my world, not everybody has 10 grand to chuck in the truck that is on a roof and managing a crew and managing his whole business. Probably doesn't have an extra 10 grand put away just to launch a website, but Chuck knows he needs a website. So,
yeah.
So let's meet Chuck where he's at. Let's get him some space on the web and get him started. And then, as he grows his company, now we can talk about what comes next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another thing that can come next is, I think so often people undercut their pricing. So another strategy is just really looking at what are you offering and how are you offering it? Because so often people are identifying their price way too early, and therefore they're not establishing the value for their price. So you can, because it's ridiculous. How much people allow themselves to be shopped based on price, because people do not shop based on price. If y'all don't hear anything I'm saying here, this is probably the most important thing. People do not shop based on price. They shop based on value. And the value you provide them, they will pay more money if you provide them more value.
I love that. Everything I do, everything I talk about with my clients is all about value-based pricing. I see this big time in the marketing space. How much is a website? How much is a web page, right? And people are dropping out these like stupid prices, $500, $100. I've seen $50 a month for 6 months, and I'm looking at, just what goes into it, going, there's no way that there could possibly be profitable in that space, but more power to them. But when it comes down to having the conversation with them and realizing, okay, you actually need this, right? And it's in pricing it for what they actually need and what they actually want, and becomes now with that conversation, a website that I maybe would have sold for $2,500 because that's the channel that they came in on, could be $7,500, 10 grand, 15 grand, just because now I've established some value and understand what they need and can talk to that value specifically. So, a lot of merit in that. And I hate the race to the bottom on pricing.
I hate that. And, I think it's so amazing that the people do that. They so quickly race to the bottom. And yet, if you're really worth what you say you're worth, then you should be charging it. Seriously, my question to everybody out there right now, when was the last time you raised your prices? Seriously, when was the last time you raised your prices? Most people get freaked out at the whole idea of just even having a 10% price increase. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's amazing to me. But the fact is that if you could raise your prices just 10%, and you could actually be able to lose 25% of your customers and still break even. And you're not going to lose 25% of your customers. You might lose 5%, maybe. But those are the ones you want to lose anyway, because there's the ones who are chopping you based on price.
I love that advice, and I want to add just another little piece to it. And it's been critical to my growth, is when you're thinking about when do I raise my prices, set hard deadline targets. That it doesn't have to be a date. That could be a revenue number. It could be a date. It could be an amount of customers. Once I have 25 monthly customers, I'm going to raise prices this much, right? But set a hard target to it, because that will help you know that you're making that right decision at that moment.
Yeah, that's really good, because otherwise, I think people can get the whole idea that they can get squeamish at the whole idea of raising their prices. If there's an objective reality there that they've already set in advance, that kind of it gives them a little bit more oomph to be able to do it instead of weasel out at the last minute.
Yeah, we use a combination of revenue targets and customer volume to dictate how our prices raise every year. So, we look at it a couple times a year, just to be aware of, where's the market versus where we're at, and what do we need, what are we comfortable losing to gain.
There you go. What are you comfortable losing to gain? There you go.
So, absolutely love that. We are getting to the end of time, and I always like to wrap up the show with a final thought. This is something that our listeners can take away from the show, and really just go and apply to their business tomorrow. So I leave the stage to you for your final thought.
I really think it's important to realize the value that you provide, and many times we really don't realize how much value we actually provide, and we tend to actually discount our services. We don't actually let it translate into the pricing that we have. So I actually encourage you right now, go ahead and raise your prices. You're worth it. If you provide a really good quality product and your prospects actually buy it, raise your prices. You're worth it. You will be surprised at how many actually will stay on with you and actually go for it at that price. And actually, it'll empower you and actually embolden you to do it again, because you're worth it. Don't settle for less.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, it's one thing that I think, if I would have learned earlier on in my business journey, I probably would have helped myself out considerably. But that is phenomenal advice, and I definitely appreciate that. If people want to find you, where are the best places to go find you on the wonderful World Wide Web?
Well, people can find me at transformationalimpactllc.com. Once again, it's transformationalimpactllc.com.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure we get that in the show notes as well, so people can find you. You also got a couple of books out there as well, if people are interested. And if I remember correctly, one on the way, if it hasn't already released yet.
That's right. Yeah. So I've written 2 books already. You can find those on Amazon. The first one was Dear Boss, What Your Employees Wish You Knew. The second one was Dear Employee, What Your Boss Wishes You Knew. And they're both research-based books. You can find them on Amazon. And the third one I'm working on right now is really it's documenting the process where I mentioned at the beginning, where I've discovered where I can help any business find 50, 75, 100K in their business in less than 50 minutes without them spending any additional money on marketing or advertising.
Fantastic. And when are you expecting that book out? A little bit later into 2022?
I'm still doing research for the book, so
we're ways
don't
out
commit
on
me to a time frame just yet.
Understood. We'll make sure we get the links to the books in the show notes as well. Really appreciate your knowledge today. Definitely eye-opening to a lot of things that I think as small business owners we overlook in how we can squeeze out a few extra pennies, dollar bills, greenbacks on what we're already doing. And so, as always, we want to thank everybody that stopped on by and listened to the episode. We appreciate you as well. Don't forget to hop on over to thewinningtactics.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter, as well as get a free copy of Becoming a Better Business Leader right into your email. So we encourage you to stop on over there, check out all of our episodes, and check out what's going on and what's coming up. So we appreciate you, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Well, that wraps up yet another episode of the Winning Tactics Podcast. You can find Adam on both the LinkedIn and Facebook platforms. And to support the show and ensure the success of the podcast, would you kindly consider visiting Patreon.com/Adam Sinkus? We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, from the Winning Tactics Podcast, remember, culture is how your team behaves when no one is looking. Take good care, and thanks for listening.